The wind came crawling over the prairie like a restless spirit, lifting dust in thin sheets and dragging it across the open plain. The sun was a merciless overseer that day, glaring down on the parched land with a heat that seemed determined to burn every last drop of life from it. Out there, where the dirt turned to hardpan and the grass stood brittle and gray, survival was a daily negotiation with death. Mary Whitfield knew that better than most. She stood in the doorway of her sagging homestead, hand shading her eyes as she surveyed the horizon. The house was nothing more than a rough, hewn shack of weathered boards, its roof patched with tar and canvas. To the east stretched a field that once grew corn, now nothing but bare dirt baked into clumps. Beyond that, the hills rose sharp and red in the sun, their shadows cut thin and black against the sky. Inside, her children waited. 3 of them. Sarah, 12 years old, had her father's steady eyes and her mother's stubbornness. She had taken on the chores of a grown woman since the day her father's coffin went into the ground 2 years ago. Then there was Ben, 8, always restless, always hungry, his face smudged with dirt and his trousers patched more times than they were whole. And finally, little Daniel, just 5, still round-cheeked, still asking why the sky was blue, why the rain wouldn't come, why Daddy never came home. Mary's heart broke every time she tried to answer him. She pulled her shawl tight around her shoulders, though the heat was fierce. Hunger had a way of making a person cold no matter the season. The well was near dry. The chickens were thin, eggs scarce, and the pantry was almost a cruel joke now. But still, she pressed on. That was all there was to do. That evening, when the sun dipped low and the horizon burned orange, Mary was out hanging a ragged line of laundry when she saw it. At first she thought it a trick of the light. A dark shape crumpled at the edge of her property, half hidden in the scrub. She froze, heart lurching, eyes scanning the plain for riders. Outlaws had been rumored near town, cutting off travelers, robbing stages. A lone figure lying out in the open was as likely a trap as a man in need. Still, she set her jaw and went to look. Her boots crunched on dry earth as she crossed the yard, her children watching wide-eyed from the doorway. The figure didn't move. As she drew closer, she saw it was a man. A big one, broad-shouldered, but broken now. His shirt was soaked dark on one side, blood dried stiff across his chest and arm. His hat lay beside him, his lips cracked and caked with dust. "Dear Lord," Mary whispered, kneeling beside him. She pressed 2 fingers to his throat. There it was, faint and faltering, a pulse. The man's eyelids fluttered. He tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Without thinking further, Mary hooked her hands under his arms and dragged with all the strength desperation gave her. The man was heavy as a sack of grain, and she gritted her teeth, sweat stinging her eyes as she pulled him yard by yard toward the house. "Sarah! Ben! Get water boiling and bring rags. Quick now." The children scrambled into action. By the time she got the stranger across the threshold, Sarah had cleared the table and spread an old quilt over it. Together, they heaved the man up, laying him flat. His face was pale beneath the sunburn, jaw shadowed with stubble, hair dark with sweat. "Ma," Ben said, staring wide-eyed, "who's got a gun?" Indeed he did, a revolver in a worn holster at his side, the leather stained with blood. Mary unbuckled it and set it aside. "Don't touch it," she warned, then leaned close to the stranger. "You hear me, mister? You're in my house now. If you aim to harm us, you won't find us so easy." His cracked lips curved in something like a smile, then he slipped into unconsciousness. For 2 days, Mary tended him. She cleaned the wound. A bullet had torn across his ribs, shallow but cruel. She boiled water, washed the blood, wrapped him in strips of cloth cut from her own dresses. She spooned broth into his mouth when he could swallow, dabbed water to his lips when he could not. Sarah helped steady him when fever shook his body. Ben hovered close, curious but wary, whispering questions. "Who is he? Where'd he come from? Is he gonna die?" Daniel, too young to understand the danger, only patted the man's hand and said, "Don't go sleep forever, mister." On the 3rd morning, the man opened his eyes. They were gray, storm gray, sharp even in weakness. He blinked against the light, turned his head slowly, and fixed on Mary. He rasped, "Saved me." Mary folded her arms. Seemed the Christian thing to do. "Don't go thinking it was easy." He gave a ghost of a chuckle, then winced at the pain it brought. "Name's Cole." Cole McGraw. Mary said nothing, but the name tugged at her memory. She'd heard it once, long ago, in town. A rancher, a rich one, if rumor told true. And more than that, a man once known for his gun, though he'd put it away years back. You got yourself shot, she said evenly. Ambush, he muttered. Men after me. Don't know if they finished the job or not. He looked at her then, steady. Don't know if I brought trouble to your door. Her jaw tightened. We got trouble enough. But I reckon God doesn't put a dying man in your path, just so you can walk away. Cole stayed. His body was slow to heal, but strength came back day by day. He spoke little at first, only enough to ask for water, or to murmur thanks when she changed the bandages. But the children drew words out of him. Sarah asked him about horses, and he told her of the wild mustangs that roamed his land. Ben asked if he'd ever shot an outlaw, and Cole's eyes went far away before he answered, yes, and I hope you never have to. Daniel climbed into his lap one afternoon and fell asleep against his chest, and for the first time Mary saw softness in the man's eyes. But always, she felt the shadow of danger. One night, as the wind moaned low across the prairie, Mary stood at the window, watching the horizon. In the distance, faint but certain, she saw the glow of a campfire. Riders. Cole came to stand beside her, moving slow from the stiffness in his ribs. He looked where she looked, then met her eyes. They're hunting me, he said quietly. They won't stop till I'm in the ground. Mary's heart hammered. Her children slept in the loft above, innocent breaths rising and falling. She tightened her shawl around her shoulders. Then I reckon, she said, voice low but steady, we'll have to be ready when they come. The prairie slept uneasy that night. The coyotes called, the wind carried dust, and the widow of the Whitfield homestead lay awake listening for hoofbeats. Somewhere out there, men with guns rode closer. Somewhere out there, the past of Cole McGraw was catching up fast, and inside the little house, a poor family clung to hope, not knowing yet how their lives were about to change forever. The morning broke heavy and strange. The prairie lay hushed, as if holding its breath. Even the wind seemed to creep low and slow across the land, carrying only the faint hiss of sand scratching along the cabin walls. Mary Whitfield rose before the sun, as always. She pulled on her faded dress, her shawl hanging loose over narrow shoulders, and stepped out into the yard. The pump groaned as she worked it, filling the tin pail. Her eyes swept the horizon again, habit now as much as fear. There it was, a dark speck. Then two, 3 riders. She drew a breath, set the pail down, and went back inside. When Cole McGraw sat at the table, one arm cradled against his ribs, a mug of weak coffee steaming before him. He looked up as she entered. He didn't ask. He already knew. They've found me, he said, voice low. Mary didn't answer right away. She moved about the small kitchen, steadying her hands by force of will. Finally, she turned to him. You aim to face them. He studied her, storm, gray eyes unreadable. If I don't, they'll burn this place. Take what little you've got. Kill whoever stands in their way. Her lips pressed thin. I won't let that happen. Not to my children. Cole nodded once. There was no hesitation in him now, no weakness from fever or wound, only a man's grim resolve. Then we fight, he said. By mid-morning, the riders were near enough that dust trailed behind them in the hot light. There were 5 of them. Hard-looking men in trail-worn hats and dusters, rifles slung, pistols at their hips. Outlaws, no doubt. Sarah peeked from the loft window, whispering down to her mother, Ma, they're coming close. Ben clutched a small hatchet, knuckles white, while little Daniel sat wide-eyed on the floor clutching a ragged toy horse. Mary turned to her children, her voice sharp but steady. You do as I say. Sarah, keep Daniel low. Ben, stay by me. Don't move unless I tell you. Then she turned to Cole. You got strength enough to shoot? Cole eased his revolver from the holster Mary had kept hidden. He spun the cylinder, checked the rounds, and snapped it shut with a click that seemed to echo in the little cabin. His face was pale but his hands were steady. I've put down worse, he said. But I'll need you steady as stone. Mary Whitfield. She met his eyes. You'll have it. The outlaws came thundering up, hooves pounding, dust boiling. The leader, a wary man with a scar down his cheek, pulled up short of the house, rifle laid casual across his saddle. McGraw, he hollered, voice carrying across the yard. You got nowhere left to run. Hand yourself over, and maybe we don't torch this widow's place. Cole stepped into the doorway, revolver in hand, shoulders squared despite the ache in his ribs. You boys already tried once, he called back. Didn't stick then. Won't stick now. The outlaw laughed, sharp and cruel. You can't shoot 5 men, McGraw. Don't matter how fast you were once. His gaze slid to Mary, standing firm beside Cole. But maybe you care what happens to them young guns in there. Mary's stomach twisted, but she lifted her chin. You best turn your horses round, she said, voice like steel. You'll find no fear here. That earned a bark of laughter. The leader spat in the dust, then jerked his hand down. Take The yard exploded into chaos. Rifles cracked, bullets splintered wood from the cabin walls. Mary dragged Ben behind the doorframe as Cole leaned out, revolver flashing. One outlaw toppled from his saddle, another ducked low, cursing. Sarah screamed as glass shattered from the loft window. Daniel buried his face in his sister's lap. Cole gritted his teeth against the pain in his ribs, firing steady, measured shots. Each report echoed like thunder, each recoil driving him back into the doorframe. Mary, heart pounding, grabbed the old shotgun from the wall, her husband's, unused since the funeral. She braced it against her shoulder, aimed through the narrow crack in the shutters, and pulled the trigger. The blast thundered, kicking her back, smoke choking the air. Out in the yard, a horse screamed, an outlaw tumbling from its back. Good shot? Cole barked, reloading with swift, practiced hands. But they were still outnumbered. The outlaws dismounted, spreading wide, firing from cover. Bullets ripped through the walls, a jug shattered in the kitchen, flour spilled across the floor like dust from a coffin. Mary's breath came fast, fear clawing at her chest. But when she looked at her children, Sarah clutching Daniel, Ben trying to be brave, something inside her turned hard as iron. She would not let them die here. Cole, the fight raged hot. Cole moved like a man reborn, every motion sharp despite the wound. He put down another outlaw with a clean shot that snapped the man back into the dirt, but a bullet grazed his shoulder, spinning him half around, blood soaking anew. Mary dragged him down, pressing cloth to the wound. You're bleeding out, she hissed. He caught her wrist, eyes blazing. Don't you stop now. You keep firing. You keep standing. Her throat tightened, but she nodded. She rose, leveled the shotgun again, and fired. Another outlaw stumbled back, clutching his leg. By now, only 2 were left standing. The scarred leader and one grim-faced rider firing from the corral. The leader snarled, voice carrying over the crack of guns. "Nuff games, McGraw! You're a dead man walking. And when you fall, the widow's brats go next." Mary's blood ran cold, but Cole only stood taller. "You lay a finger on them," he said, voice like a church bell tolling, "and I'll send you straight to hell myself." Then came the thunder of more hooves. For a moment, Mary feared more outlaws, but then she saw the badge glinting in the sun, Sheriff Dawson and 2 deputies, rifles ready, charging hard. The leader cursed, swinging onto his horse. "We'll finish this another day," he spat, wheeling his mount. The last outlaw followed, and together they tore off across the plain, dust trailing in their wake. The lawmen thundered past, chasing, shots cracking in the distance. Silence fell over the homestead. Only the groan of the wind through bullet holes in the wall remained. Inside, Sarah clutched Daniel, tears running down her face. Ben stood stiff, chest heaving, still gripping the hatchet though his hands trembled. Mary leaned against the doorframe, the shotgun heavy in her arms, her body shaking as the last of her strength drained away. Cole lowered himself to the table, bloodied, breathing hard. His revolver hung loose in his hand, but his eyes were alive, fierce. He looked at Mary, then at the children. "You saved me?" he said quietly. "And you stood when most would have run." Mary's voice cracked. "I only did what I had to. For them." He gave a slow nod. Then, after a long pause, he added, "You gave me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago." Her brows furrowed. "What's that?" "A reason to fight." Days later, when the sheriff confirmed the outlaws had been scattered and hunted down, Cole sat with Mary and her children at the rough kitchen table. His ribs were healing, his strength was back, and his decision was made. "I got land," he said, voice steady. "More than any one man can work. Cattle, horses, water enough to feed 100 families. But all of it's empty. Just me and a house too big for one soul. Mary looked at him wary. And why are you telling me this? Because you gave me back my life, he said, eyes on hers. And because you and your young'uns deserve better than starving on this patch of dust. If you'll have it, I want you to come with me. My land can be your land. My name your shield. Not charity, Mary Whitfield. Family, her breath caught. Sarah's eyes went wide, Daniel clapped his little hands, and Ben whispered, "You mean we'd have a ranch, for real?" Cole smiled faintly, wary but warm. For real. That night, as the stars wheeled bright and endless over the prairie, Mary stood outside the battered homestead for the last time. The wind tugged at her shawl, carrying with it the scent of dust and dry earth. Behind her, Cole waited with the children, horses saddled, wagon loaded with what little they owned. She laid her hand on the worn wood of the doorway, the place where her husband had once stood, where her children had grown, where hunger and hardship had pressed them near to breaking. Then she turned, lifted Daniel into the wagon, and took Cole's offered hand. Together they rode into the wide horizon, a poor widow no more, a dying cowboy no longer, a family, forged in gunsmoke and grace, bound for a future brighter than the dawn.